We're talking Iron Dome and the F-35 this week on The Breakout. Welcome to The Breakout. I'm Aaron Mehta. Solo at the moment, Teresa Hitchens, our space reporter, will be joining me shortly to talk about Iron Dome, specifically Iron Dome for America, which is something that President Trump has ordered created, tasked the Pentagon to fairly quickly figure out how to plan, resource, and produce what's essentially a multi-layered air defense system for the American homeland. It's important to differentiate here. Iron Dome is an Israeli system. It's been in use for years. It's used for catching small rockets, drones, etc. It's become very popular in the public space because you can actually see photos of interceptions happening over cities. That's not what this is. What President Trump is talking about here, even though it's called Iron Dome, is an American-made system of multi-layered different pieces that will protect the American homeland from everything from those small rockets up to ballistic missiles. It'll also include, most controversially, some space-based interceptors, which goes back to the old Reagan Star Wars idea.
That we could intercept and destroy strategic ballistic missiles before they reached our own soil or that of our allies.
Teresa got a hold of a memo which spells out how the Pentagon might go about this process. We're going to hear from her now. All right, well, we're joined now by Teresa Hitchens, our space guru. T's going to walk us through what we learned from a memo that she got in the last week about the Iron Dome plan. T, obviously this is a memo that was not officially signed out by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth yet. It's a memo in works, things can change, et cetera, but what did we learn by looking at this thing?
So the memo is an all-hands-on-deck memo. It sets up task forces led by different parts of the Pentagon, whether they be civilians under, say, the Office of Secretary of Defense or military commanders, to produce a number of products that are either plans to fulfill Donald Trump's executive order on Iron Dome or assessments of how those plans might be fulfilled. So there's two types of things. The big takeaway there is that everything is being pushed towards a decision about how much money will be in the fiscal 2026 budget.
Right, and 2026 budget, we are hoping comes sometimes in the next few months, maybe May, maybe June at this point. Obviously, we're still under CR. There's all sorts of different moving parts, but let's assume for the sake of argument, this is going to come at some point soon.
Yes, it should be in a normal budget cycle. That would be happening in the next few months.
In a normal budget cycle, that would be happening. That's true.
So it doesn't give people very long
to
do this. So it's very ambitious in both its scope and its scale, as well as its timing.
Right.
Okay. And there are two big things in the memo that raise questions. One is the program to revive a sensor system that was developed by the Missile Defense Agency called the Hypersonic and Ballistic Tracking Space Sensor, HBTSS.
You have the best acronyms in your beat.
Yeah. In any event, this sensor was developed by the Missile Defense Agency, but it was then essentially taken over by the Space Development Agency and for all intents and purposes shut down. SDA took the technology and put it in another satellite system that they are building. This seems to revive that program, but it doesn't explain who's in charge of it. Whether it's the Missile Defense Agency, whether it's the Space Development Agency, which essentially killed it in the first place, or the other acquisition organization within the Space Force, which is the Space Systems Command.
Right.
So it muddies a lot of waters.
All right. And then the other aspect of this that really caught your attention, was an issue near and dear to your heart, which is space-based interceptors, which you and Michael Morrow wrote a great piece about kind of the geopolitical impacts that adding these things could happen. What surprised you in the memo about that?
I'm not sure I was surprised,
but fair enough.
Since the executive order was very clear that,
this is happening.
But we're going to develop and deploy space-based interceptors. But the memo does set out a process whereby there will be three options developed, And the first one is a small constellation, the second one is a medium-sized constellation, and the third one is a large constellation. That process will happen and be completed by, I believe, February 28th.
Okay.
Which is a very short
Yeah,
planning
it's a very
cycle.
short planning cycle.
I'm wondering if they're going to pull up the old plans from 40 years ago.
Yeah,
and
bring out the old Reagan Star Wars
dust them
stuff.
off.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a very short planning cycle, and at the end, someone's going to have to choose which of those options are most effective from a warfighting perspective, but B, cost effective. And it's costs that have always been the big issue for space-based interceptors, even with the changes in technology and the lower prices for things like launch. Today, cost is still a big
We're still talking about things starting with many Bs.
Many Bs.
Many Bs. All right. Well, thank you, T. Moving from space to something more terrestrial, the F-35. After the break, I'll be back to talk a little bit about some news there.
At Leonardo DRS, our agility helps bring the ability to dominate in any scenario, on any platform, helping our warfighters accomplish the mission and get home safely. Leonardo DRS, our agility, your advantage.
All right, so something a little bit closer to home. Let's talk about the F-35. The Marines put out their aviation plan recently, and it had a surprise in there. A significant drop from F-35Bs and then investing into F-35Cs. When I say significant drop, it's real numbers. It's 353 Bs had been the plan buy, that drops to 280, and there had been a plan to buy 67 Cs, now it's 140. Quick reminder, the F-35A, conventional takeoff and landing, goes up, goes down. The B, STOVL, goes up, hovers as it lands, looks very cool at air shows. C is the carrier variant, has a tail hook, big wings, that's better for carrier landings. Look, we don't know exactly what the operational decision was behind this. The Marines did not spell out why they made this fairly dramatic change, something obviously we'll be asking the Commandant about next time we see him. But clearly there are going to be reasons for doing this that the Marines have planned out and made a decision, and there will be an impact on main production lines at Lockheed Martin as well as this shift happens. For more on that, make sure you're at breakingdefense.com, and make sure you're liking and subscribing to The Breakout so that we can reach you directly every week. I'm Aaron Mehta. Thanks for watching.